Hello and welcome. This week I've got another one of my coaches on. This is Romy. Romy is out of Miami and I love her. She used to be my student and she has grown up in her own right and she runs her own business, but she also works for me. And yeah, she was one of my besties when I was living in South Florida. Welcome,
Okay,
Romy.
thank you. And you're greatly missed. So anytime you want to come back, it'll be great.
About it from time to time. I do think about it sometimes.
Good, good. Yeah,
It's a
but
long way to go though, just to see. I joke
so
because I
you're
came
saying
back.
there's a chance.
What's that?
So you're saying there's a chance. Like in Dumb and Dumber.
I guess anything is possible, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
came back to the West Coast for a handful of reasons. The biggest one being my dad, an 80-year-old man who I wanted to get close to again. I just want to be near him. And 4 months after I move home, they're like, we're selling the house and moving to Utah. Thanks.
That's where you're definitely not going.
I will never go to Utah in this life. I mean, it is pretty, don't get me wrong. It is definitely a beautiful place, but the culture of Utah is not something that I have any interest in. So, Vegas and South Florida are very similar in the sense that, like, you guys have a lot more Latin American and Caribbean feel, but the fact that it's very mixed, it's very transient. And what I like about both of these places is people mind their own business. Living in Los Angeles, people are very nosy and they're really quick to judge. What kind of car do you have? What kind of shoes are you wearing? What kind of handbag do you have? If you're in like West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, anywhere in that, it's not enough money. Now, I lived in Santa Monica where they're like, you're not driving a Prius. Well, you're destroying the earth then. Like it's that kind of judgment, you know what I mean? Or how dare you not wear your Toms of Maine shoes? And like, why are you doing your hair? Like, who are you trying to impress? Like, it's really weird, but like,
Crazy because that's almost sounds like how a lot of the people in the yoga community are, right? So it's like they're so judgmental, but then they hold themselves up to this high standard because they're vegan and because ahimsa and they don't use guns and all of this stuff. But then they're so judgmental. All they do is talk shit.
yep. Well, and I guess because Southern California is kind of a mecca for that,
Hmm.
the yoga, like that's where it was like birthed, right? Like when yoga kind of made its way to the United States from the East, Southern California, Bikram yoga, Ashtanga yoga, like it blossomed there. And so you have this subculture that is very pretentious in that sense. And the only reason I could survive it is because my skill set was so exceptional that people could only do so much judging. But there's just such a nice blend. Like I never really came across that in South Florida. In fact, I find the yoga people, at least in the Fort Lauderdale area, much more aloof. Like
Yeah.
beach yoga. You know what I mean? Like they're not like it's not super disciplined, so it's a
Right.
little bit
Right.
more free in that sense.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just found that South Florida people, they're not like they don't care, like they're not interested. And you get compliments like if you, oh, I like your dress or I like whatever, like, but for the most part, people aren't with all the money that there is, because there's an obscene amount of money down there. You would think that it would be more, and yet I think because the high end money is not local, they're more like like they're Europeans and they're there like part-time.
Yeah.
So so maybe we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
I think it would be nice to be in both places. If I really had it my way, I would do both.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm a
Mhm.
little too cheap to make that kind of investment, but maybe someday.
One day, there's some hope there.
Yeah, it's nice to be by the ocean from time to time.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, today we wanted to talk about something that I think Romy really excels in. And one of the reasons that I adore Romy, I have a whole team of women I work with, But if I need a response immediately and I send out a group text, guess who's gonna like she's gonna be on it, she's gonna deliver, she's gonna have it like done like within like 5 minutes. That's Romy. Romy is the girl who just does not wait to get things done. And I really appreciate that about her.
I don't think you've ever told me that, but I knew that. I knew that you felt that way. Because it's that Aries moon that I have of impulsivity of just like do it, mixed with the ADHD that I have of do it now before you forget.
Yeah. Well, and there's just you're a quadruple Scorpio, correct? Or
Uh, I have five.
five, right? So that's a lot of Scorpio energy. And Scorpio on the higher octave is very much about, I don't want to say responsibility, but you can't have transformation without action and appropriate action. And so there's an understanding intellectually from you that like it just has to be done a certain way to get done at all, I guess. And I think that that's my dad's a quadruple Scorpio. He's incredibly responsible. So when you operate from that higher octave of the Scorpio energy, it's really appropriate. It's very
Yeah,
powerful. You're in your power.
yeah. I love operating that way. I've always been that way too. It's just, it comes very natural to me, even if it's very hard sometimes.
Well, you're committed to the discipline of it.
Right.
And I have found growing up because of my trauma, I became hyper independent. So I really ran hot, like hot on the spectrum of get her done her. Like just get it done. Make a list, get it done. Very disciplined, very structured, very systems oriented. And then I went into the yoga community and into the yoga practice deep for a long time into spirituality, which is no boundaries, no expectations, no nothing. It's very free and really went the distance on the feminine aspect of things, which is very chaotic and very unstructured and feelings operated as opposed to intellectually operated. And I went that spectrum, burnt out. Burnt out from both ends, actually. But now I'm finding a happy medium where it's like sometimes it's appropriate to go with the flow. But now that I'm rebuilding my business, it's like systems, strategy, structure. And so what's really fun, and haven't talked about this though, is I spent most of my life being on the metaphysical spectrum and the spiritual spectrum in terms of mindset. Whereas now I'm really, even though I have 15 years of astrology under my belt and 2 decades of yoga under my belt, and like literally from the age 14 on, I lived this life. I'm actually taking on a more nihilistic approach, which is instead of is it meant to be, or I'm not manifesting, it's like fuck meant to be manifesting. This is a numbers game.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah.
taking a very different approach to my life in terms of my belief systems, if for no other reason than to test those theories to see what clicks.
Yeah. And it has to be that balance, right? Because I was the opposite. For a very long time, I was very much in the masculine of everything, like go hard, go home, things need to be a certain way, be very aggressive with it. And I was not in the spiritual or metaphysical like until I became yogi and went into my yoga practice, and that was in 2013. But I was always very disciplined, very habits, routines, all of that. And now I'm trying to learn that balance of being a little not so strict, not so hard on myself, and being more in the feminine and trying to find that balance because we need both, but not too extreme on either side.
Yeah, I mean, even the program offers an understanding of when it's appropriate to take a more feminine modality versus a more masculine modality. And um, because we know if we're all flow and no structure, nothing gets done. But if we're all structure and no flow, nothing moves. So it's really important to have that blend. And so, yeah. And Romy and I decided to discuss something that pertains to, again, just the chronic nature of where we live in today's society, which is, I mean, I heard a statistic that people are getting burnt out as early as 25, which is terrible. You know, it used to be, my doctor said 45 to 50. my program is designed for 35 and over. And a lot of it is just the exasperation, I think, of COVID, but it boils down to like if we really look at an individual and like what is creating their burnout, it's not just one thing. Like it's a whole host of things that have led to that point where their mind and body are not operating. And I've made the distinction on some of my um, short form videos where I talk about short-term burnout versus long-term burnout. Short-term being new project, new relationship, new job, new something where it's output, 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 and you haven't got enough reward to fuel the system forward. So that's like short-term burnout. Like when I wrote my book, I got burnt out, right? Because it was just all output until I delivered it. And then like there's long-term burnout, which is where now the body is starting to default as a result of being in this pattern for so long. And long-term burnout usually has to do with being in a situation too long. Trauma can play into long-term burnout. But there are two habits that it really boils down to that we're going to talk about today. One is no decisions, and the other is no actions. And so people have a tendency to stay in the mind, right? They're like, I'm just going to keep juggling this mentally because I either am afraid to take action or make a decision, or I don't know what actions or decisions to make. So they end up just juggling, juggling, juggling. And that is actually one of the, or two of the worst habits that you can engage in that will lead to that long-term burnout because cortisol can't come down without a solution. It can't come down without unpacking. It can't come down without putting something in its file. It can't come down like it's going to reign supreme if unless we're unpacking. And Romy is one of the busiest people that I know, and yet she just does such a phenomenal job at unpacking as she goes, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it's like in real time to confront things so that way you're not just in this cerebral place all the time, right?
It's important to build self-awareness and to get to know yourself as well, because you might be thinking, oh, I'm just so stressed out, when in reality, it's you're not giving yourself the time to pause and kind of evaluate what it is that you need to be doing in order to take care of yourself. Because as busy as I am, like you mentioned, I have my business, I go to school, I have my two kids, I'm a single mom, my youngest is special needs. When people hear that, they're like, how do you manage all of that? And I've had to really look at everything that I have to do and stop being so hard on myself and tackle the most important things. Because I was the same with a huge to-do list, like I need to do it all. And that was burning me out. When I got divorced, I was so used to married and having support with my kids. And I could go work out whenever I wanted. I could have worked on my business whenever I wanted. I could have done everything whenever I wanted. And I was still trying to do that alone. And that was a huge reality check. Like, no, girl, you cannot keep doing this because you do not have support. You don't have anybody else there. It's just you. So giving myself grace and then realizing, okay, I cannot do it all, but I need to do what's important. And shifting that mindset of being superwoman to what are the things that are going to propel me forward, whether it's in my business, whether it's in my health and fitness, whether it's mentally, my mindset, my mindfulness, sitting down with myself, even 5 minutes in the car when people are like, I don't have time to meditate. I'm like, but you have time to scroll social media.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Because when you park outside of your house, you could sit in your car for 5 minutes and just take a mental break. That's a meditation. Just taking a mental break. No distractions, no nothing, just breathe. But it's just the excuses and all of that. Like, I don't do well with that because as busy as I am, when somebody comes and tries to tell me their excuses, it's I just can't process it. So whenever a situation comes, sometimes I get huge curveballs. Like I was not expecting this to happen. And I'm like, okay, so what is the best possible outcome and how can I respond to this versus react, right? So, yeah, just seeing what is it that I need to do in this situation in order to move forward. Or even if I have to take a step back, because sometimes that's what I have to do. Delegation, give something to, even if it's my sister, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and learning to ask for help when you need it.
I
Because when we have so much control, that's very hard for us to do, which I was huge. I just needed the control of everything. And control is really just BS. We really don't have control of anything. It's an illusion.
well, after like what was it? It was either like 13 or 11 Pluto transits in the course of like maybe it was 11 Pluto transits in 13 years. It was just Pluto will rip your hands off if you don't let go. So it was just let go, let go, let go, let go for like forever. I just really had to surrender to the only thing I have control over, really and truly, are my thoughts and feelings in this moment. And that's it. That's it. And so after a decade of that lesson being burned into me, I don't personally operate from a space of trying to control the environment. And I find that a lot of people they do. They try to find security and certainty by manipulating their environment instead of security and certainty by managing their mind.
Right.
And it's one is a lot easier to manage than the other ultimately, you know?
One you actually have control of, right? You have control of your responses. You might, and it gets better over time when you do the healing work, when you work on yourself, because I was very reactive prior to doing any healing work. I would go from 0 to 100 real quick. My Aries moon was like, I wouldn't even, when I would think of the things that I would do after, I'm like, I am crazy. I am insane. But I still get the thoughts like, wow, I could really go there, but I don't. And then I respond differently.
Mhm.
And that brings so much peace, and your nervous system gets calm. And you start controlling the thoughts in your head because the inner critic gets loud, you feeling like you're a fraud or whatever, or you're not worthy. Those thoughts will come in, but you're able to question them and just tell them that's not true. Like these are the actual facts, not what you're trying to make me believe based on programming or conditioning that I've had since childhood.
Well, and one thing I teach with the self-mastery is that like your thoughts can only take up space if they're clinging to, like they have to hook into a feeling. Otherwise, they just fall right out, right? Like if we're viscerally in a place where we're angry, then anything we look at is going to be like, that's crooked. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like you're going to find things to be angry about, like because you're feeling that anger. And so it's a matter of kind of breaking up those two. So we perceive something to be true if the mind identifies with it and the body's like, yeah, we do feel unjustified, right? Or that that's was unjust what happened to us, for example. But we don't have to believe everything we think. And so if we can break up that patterning, which is a whole working job in itself, is to disconnect that mind body connection so that our default can change. Because otherwise, we are just like Joe Dispenza says, like if we're unconscious, the body becomes the mind, right? And we're just reacting to everything. And so it's not that you can't have reactions, but it's a matter of pausing and going, is this a legitimate thing to react to? Just it's just an old habit of mine of reacting and pausing and just like re-engaging with the self in a way that I mean, we'll talk about confrontation and dealing with using your voice and stuff and how to heal that part so that you don't feel powerless. Because ultimately, like with every person I've worked with, everyone just wants to feel a certain way. Like we go and create these big things and do this shit because we're like, if I just do that, then I'll feel better. When really it's like, let's just change the feeling and stop focusing so hard on the external. And the external just becomes a logistical process as opposed to like the antidote that has to heal me. You know what I mean? It's like, and it changes the framework altogether.
Yeah.
So, um, but a lot of people and women specifically, they get overwhelmed and it's like you have to go back to basics. I mean, I find that just writing stuff down, when you actually write it down, you're like, oh, that's it. That's all I have to focus on.
Yeah, it's not that bad. And then you do it and you're just, wow, I should have just done that like 3 days ago.
Right. But when we keep it in the mind space and we juggle, 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 then the cortisol is needed to juggle, juggle, juggle.
Exactly. It
But
feels
it's
like it's more than what it is. Like when you brain dump and you put everything on paper, you realize it's not that much.
mhm.
And what can I tackle? What is the most important thing for me to tackle now? Like, what is priority? Even if it's one thing, just one thing.
Yeah, because not everything is urgent, but the brain
No,
has convinced it all is.
no. I used to do my to-do list and I would put it like, take a shower. Like, hello, I take a shower every day. Like, I don't need to put this on my list. It's just, there's also a dopamine. Like, you're just like, oh, I like scratching things off my list. So my list is like so long. No, just cut the BS. Cut all of that.
Yeah, no, there's many times where I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to get done. And then I write it down and like an hour later I'm done. And I'm like, well, joke's on you, Paige. Like there wasn't a lot to do. But getting organized in real time can unpack a lot of that. And a lot of the women who are suffering from stress, they're high achieving women. And so, it's like, well, they are unpacking that part. So then what would be the next thing? What's that other thing that like keeps women in a stress loop, right? Well, I one of the things I love about Romy is Romy has no problem calling things for what they are. I mean, her whole brand is it's not all love and light.
Yeah.
And, you know, we resonate very well because neither one of us are very codependent. Neither one of us are people pleasers, and we both like to utilize our voice. And I have found that that is one of the best ways to unpack stress.
Yeah,
Speak
absolutely. But
up.
that place, you really do have to really know who you are, learn to love yourself more than anything, and have the confidence and realize my voice matters, my needs matter, and not being scared to lose people in the process because not everyone's going to be at the same level as you with the work that you've done. For example, we've had conversations where I know I could come to you and I could talk to you about certain things because I know it's going to be a conversation where we're not trying to make each other feel bad or it's you against me. We're just like, well, this is the situation. Like, how can we tackle this? And then that's it. It's done. Right. And those are the type of relationships that you want to keep around. So the more that you show up that way, the more you start weeding out the people that are not good for you mentally, because that's another huge stressor that overwhelms you when you have terrible support or you have nothing but haters around you that really are just watching you for your downfall. It's stressful because you just feel like you're alone, but you're surrounded by people.
Yeah, well, you feel like you have to watch your back a lot, And then there's the whole, like, again, I'm so shocked at just how many individuals, I guess it's been to my benefit, I've made a lot of money off of helping women who don't know how to use their voice, but they don't know how to use their voice. And like, to your point, when we run really deep on codependency, we don't even have an identity. Therefore, we don't even know what we're supposed to say, but we've created this internal friction because we know we're sacrificing, or at least the body knows, and the body's running in the red because your needs subconsciously and consciously are not even being met, you know? And so it's like learning to identify what those patterns are, who you want to be. And, again, it just baffles me how many women are just terrified of their own voice and their own power. And yet being in a space of full power is one of the best places to be because if I have to pretend when I show up, that's a lot of baggage I'm carrying. But if I can show up authentically, and to show up authentically just means to honor yourself in any given state of being. It just means like right now I'm angry. I'm not going to take it out on you, but the anger's there, it's present. Like that's what authenticity is. But if we show up pretending to be something we're not, that is a huge stress to the system. And the reason a lot of people burn out or we're burning out between 45 and 50 is because that patterning can't go anymore. It can't sustain them anymore. But with society, lack of communication, lack of community, a lack of support, the exasperation since COVID, like everything that's happening, it's making it harder and harder because now those systems are not even in place. And your patterning is falling apart. You know what I mean? Like it's not working in your favor.
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And if you have so much to do already, to add that additional stressor that doesn't serve you, that you could easily like get rid of if you put in the work. Not that it's easy, but it's something that you could get off your plate. It opens up so much peace in your life that if more people knew that, they would definitely do the work.
Well, because if I show up as I am with what I know, who I am, like all those things, I'm carrying my own load. But if I have to show up and be a certain way for Romy, now I'm carrying her load. And if I have to show up a certain way for my boss, I got to carry his load. And my spouse, well, now I got people please for him. That's a lot on your back. And then
It is.
we wonder like why we're so tired. It's like, well, you're not honoring you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are some of the things, like I know what I do with clients. What do you do with clients who are stuck in that space where they just don't even know where to begin in terms of creating a framework for setting boundaries, using their voice?
Well, the first thing that I try to see is like, where is this belief coming from? Right? Because it's a belief. Even though it's the same results, it could be different things that you went through in childhood or even in relationships or whatnot. Once I identify that, then intuitively I could kind of pinpoint, okay, so what situations can I put you in order for us to practice doing things, whether it's a lot of the times it's just a hard conversation that they need to practice. And then no matter what, you have that hard conversation and remember that your voice matters, you matter, because what happens, especially with women, is that we put everybody's needs before our own.
Mhm.
Everybody's needs. Like we would not show up to something because, oh my God, they need us there. But when it comes to us going to the gym, oh, like I'll just put it off. That shouldn't even be the case. So when people start showing up in that way, people around them are not used to it. And they think, oh, you're being selfish or this. And teaching them, you're not selfish. You're not selfish because you're not doing anything bad. And the outcome, you being a happier person, is going to benefit the people that matter around you. If you're a mom, it's going to benefit your kids. If you're in a relationship, it'll benefit your spouse if they're willing to meet you there as well, which I see a lot of the time they want their spouse to join in on doing the work. No, you just have to focus on you. Focus on you. So figuring out exactly where this is coming from, figuring out, what situations I could put them in order to make them uncomfortable. Because getting uncomfortable builds confidence. Stepping into fear builds confidence. The more
Absolutely.
confidence you build, the easier it is for you to start showing up authentically. Because when you get to a point that you really do not care what people think, I think that is the biggest power move ever. Not that you're going to go around and be, rude to everybody or just not be a nice person, but I'm going to show up authentically. If you don't like it, that's a you problem. This is not a me problem. I am not doing anything bad. I know my intentions. And if it's uncomfortable for you, then that's probably something that you need to work on, or we're just not a good mix. And that's okay too.
I find that people really resent those who stand in their power, mostly because they don't have the courage to do it themselves.
Right, absolutely.
You
And that's
know,
where the shadow work comes in, right? Because if something somebody else does triggers you, then maybe that's something that you need to look at within yourself.
but the biggest thing that people need to understand who play into this patterning of doing for others, pleasing others, showing up the way that they think others want is it's not Like no amount of me showing up to try to please you will actually fill you. Like it doesn't
Oh,
actually get the job done. And it's like, where is the limit? Like, where's the line? Like, where does it stop? Right? Like, I remember being 19 years old. My dad's like, he found out I wasn't going to church. And he was like, what are you, inactive now? And I just was like, yeah, but if I try to please you, you'll just keep raising that bar. And I'm not doing that. That's exhausting. Like, I'll never reach it. And that's what people do. They just keep pushing back the goal line. If you're trying to please people, you never actually reach that goal line because unconsciously they're like, oh, well, just keep giving me, so I'll just keep taking.
and
Whereas when you set the boundary, and I tell this to people, I'm like, you set a boundary, I guarantee people might not like you as much, but they'll respect you more.
absolutely, absolutely.
And I would rather be respected than liked any day.
If everybody likes you, then you're not authentic because you can't like nothing. There's nothing that everybody likes.
I'm always surprised when anyone likes me.
I love you. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't know. You coached me.
I'm always surprised when anyone likes me because I'm so
But honestly, that is what drew me to you, Paige. When I started following you and I would see your authenticity. When I remember it was that. I was like, this girl's real. She's not about the BS. She speaks her mind. She doesn't care what people think. I like her. I like her. And
well,
that's when I started to work with you because what if I want to work with somebody, they have to be at a different level than I am. You were. You you have a certain lifestyle that I would want, right? So there I am showing up. And I just felt relatable to you. Like I feel like we're alike. And it's because I'm the same way. I want to work with her. She could get me to a different level because she's done it. And that's how when we show up as our true selves, we're able to attract the right people that we could help. Because if we're not, we start connecting with a whole bunch of different people and we're not going to be able to help them because they're not our people.
well, and people don't realize that when you are outsourcing validation constantly, you're giving your power away. And so how can you have energy? You've outsourced your power.
Yeah, if everything that you do, everything is based on what other people think, their opinions, or validating you, you're never going to be fulfilled because it comes outside of you. And this is coming from somebody with a Libra South node. So you know the codependency that I had to break myself was huge. It was huge. But again, learning how to move different and doing the uncomfortable thing is what's going to get you there.
Well, and I feel like a lot of times there's also this idea that like if I don't, then I'm a bitch or I'm not nice or so two things. First of all, I think it was Brene Brown that did the research and found that people who prioritize themselves first actually have more to give. So that's number one. And there's a difference between nice and kind. And I saw a podcast and I loved how she said it. She said, on the East Coast, people are kind, but they're not nice. On the West Coast, they're nice, but they're not kind. She said, on the West Coast, you break down in your car, you need a tire change, whatever. People will be like, oh my God, man, that sucks for you. I'm so sorry, but they won't help you. On the East Coast, they're gonna be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Did you hit another nail? What the hell? Get out of the way. Let me change your tire. Right? So there's a difference between nice and kind. And I always seek to be kind as opposed to being nice because nice is like sugar, putting sugar on shit. I don't need that. And I'll sniff it out anyway. Trust me, my nose is strong. I want you to be kind. I need you to be honest with me. I cannot show up and meet your expectations if you're not being honest about what they are. I had a conversation with a female friend of mine recently, and she let me down severely. And I'm like, we just had this discussion. If this is only as far as you can go, that needs to be communicated. You're not going to let me down by being honest with me because then I know what to expect. But if you say you can go here and I expect it and then you don't, well, now I feel stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
So appropriate clarity and expectations and boundaries, like it gives people a framework that they can actually work with.
Yeah.
But when we live in confusion and ambiguity, and well, if I tell them the truth and blah, I don't know what you expect. Like people will avoid confrontation only to guarantee confrontation.
Can you please
Only to
explain
guarantee.
that?
Now let me
I
rephrase that. Only to
don't
guarantee
understand.
conflict.
I don't understand that. Things would have been so much easier if you just told me from the
And I
get.
I have to train my inner group. Like I literally have had to train the close people in my life to the point where they're like, bitch, I gotta go now. And I'm like, hey, I'll talk to you later. And I'm not offended.
Yeah.
Like I talking to Tanisi yesterday. I was like, hey, so, how are you feeling? Because she's been sick. She's like, I don't have time for that. Let's get to business. It's like, okay, let's get to business. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? She's like, I got an hour. Let's get this done. You know what I mean? Fine. Like, you're not going to offend me by being clear with me.
Right. So I think it also has to do a lot with the whole people pleasing. Like somebody's just so quick to say yes, sure, because they don't know how to say no. And then after they're just kicking themselves in the rear because they don't know why did I say that? Why wasn't I just honest? Da, 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 da. But
Well, it goes back to knowing yourself. And like so many people that I work with, they don't want to look at themselves because they've never given themselves permission. They've spent their life doing what they thought was better for others to create safety for themselves, only to completely sacrifice any identity, any boundary, any sort of will. Like, what do you want? What do you need? And so, yeah, it goes back to like, who are you? What do you want? What do you need? What works for you? What doesn't? And when we have that conversation, I swear to God, more often than not, it's like, I, I was talking to another friend of mine recently, and I said to her, how have you been? She goes, me? Me? She's married with 4 kids. I don't know the last time I thought about me.
yeah, I could tell
Stressed
you,
out, exhausted all the time.
I could tell you as a mom of two kids that are 7 years apart, when I had my first son, I had not done any healing work. I had not done any personal development. I thought I was the best mom in the world because I put my kid first. I put my husband first, my house first. I thought I was all of that. And I broke down and I crashed out. And then I realized, no, 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 I need to take care of myself first. 7 years later, having my second kid, that kid, I'm selfish. Okay, you do not come before me. And that sounds so terrible to some moms, but no, I'm able to show up as a better mom because I put myself first. I have to take my breaks. I go on my vacations without them, even if they get sad because I'm not taking them. Oh, well, too bad. This is what I need for me in
But
order for me to show up.
you're not calloused about it. I mean, I don't know how many times we've made plans, and those plans are made around your schedule with your kids. Right?
Correct.
So it's not like you're like, oh, it's only me and I never care about them. Like, no,
Right.
they're a priority, but like there's there's Romy's kids, and then there's Romy's social life. It's like there's a
I don't
pecking
dismiss
order.
everything. It's not like I never could hang out with you because I always have to, be with my kids or I have to be doing something and working all the time or like cleaning or just no. I'm not identifying with any of these roles. What do I feel like doing today? What do I want? Sometimes I just sit there. What do I feel like doing today? I don't feel like working today. I don't want to do that. What can I put off for tomorrow? What's the one thing? Let me just do one thing that I need to do today. What's important? And I'll do that. Because we have to listen to ourselves too, because that's how we manage the overwhelm and the burnout.
Yeah, I mean, I can put someone on a diet and give them all the supplements in the world, but if they're not doing this part, it doesn't matter.
I mean, how many people do you know have been dieting, working out, eating right, all of it, and do not lose a single pound until they start doing the mindset and the healing work? I
Oh,
know time.
it's crazy how many women do not lose weight until they leave the abusive relationship, for example.
Mhm.
They'll be eating
Right.
like a bird, almost terrified to eat, and yet then they finally leave, and all of a sudden the body's like, "Oh, we're safe," right? Like,
Yeah. Exactly. Because you're not in survival mode.
but confronting life as it comes is so essential to actually being able to unpack so the brain is free and that you can actually move on and feel better because we can work, and I know this from experience. We can work on the body all day long, but again, if the mind's not right, it doesn't matter. We will just default to the body.
Right.
Or yeah, we'll just default the body will just default to the mind and vice versa. I can work on my mind, but if I don't heal the inflammation in my body, then that will happen as well. And it'll just cycle. So it's like we have to work on the body, but like if you're not dealing with these other parts, you'll cycle back. And
It's like a target. What is it? When people want to target an area in their body to like lose weight, and you can't do that. You can't just target train. You
no.
have to work everything out in order to get the physique that you want. It's the same thing. You cannot target because I could tell you when I first started working out and doing some type of personal development, yeah, I was super skinny, I look good, whatever. But if you look at my pictures back then and you look at me now, there's a huge difference that you could see in the energy just by looking at pictures and also seeing how I don't look so tired and I was younger and how I just look better overall.
Mhm.
And I'm older, like 10 years ago. I look better than I did 10 years ago. And it's because I've done the actual work to, because it just radiates out of you. You're not stressed out. People want to go and get fillers and Botox and all of this stuff, which is okay. I'm not against it, but they don't really, if they knew how much better they would look if they just took care of themselves inside, they wouldn't spend so much money on so many units of Botox. It'll probably be less.
Well, there's a lot of, and I've talked about this, there's a lot of compensatory actions that like women will take to try to look good instead of just doing the inner work. I mean,
Exactly.
nothing will make you look more refreshed than a good night's rest. Doesn't matter like how many cucumbers you throw on those eyes. Like just learn to sleep,
Exactly.
And with the yeah, so like we can focus on the body, but if the mind is not where it needs to be, then it will always default back. And this is why I switched up my program because I was like, well, you know, I'm over 35 now. I have to address both.
Yeah.
The brain defaults to the body and the body defaults to the brain. Like, unfortunately, we have to work on both now. It's not, and everyone wants a quick fix. But if you got here over the course of 35, 40 years, it's not going to go away overnight. Like, these are habits. You wonder why so many women get cancer. Stop people pleasing. Cancer is resentment. That's what it is. Cancer is manifested as a result of resentment. So if you are not dealing with your pain, right, you're not using your voice, then you build up resentment. And cancer loves it.
Right, Bennett.
Women get breast cancer because they are, literally like what's the word? Not suffocating, but suppressing all of their emotions. Men get prostate cancer because they're suppressing their emotions. And so it's like if you don't want to get cancer, speak up. And I know a lot of women who are like, oh, I do speak up. I'm in leadership. I know how to talk. No, I'm not talking about like the generic speaking to the audience who doesn't trigger you. I'm talking about speaking up with the one asshole whose approval that you want, who you're not going to get, and speaking to him in a way that honors you instead of like trying to cater to a narrative in the hopes that eventually he'll validate you, right? That's the conversation I'm talking about.
Exactly.
That is the one that's going to heal you. And a lot of times, women think, oh, well, if I do this, I risk my career, I risk my job, I risk this, I risk that. Really? Maybe short term, maybe short term, but the universe, and even with every chart I've looked at, we are not here to compromise who we are. We are here
Exactly.
to learn how to not compromise who we are. And so the more you can honor who you are, the more things, life, energy, the universe, whatever you want to call it, will work with you. The resistance is a result of working against yourself, working against life. That friction. You have bought into a paradigm that works for a couple of people at the top, but it doesn't work for you. And we are in an era right now where corporations are losing their grasp and they are like letting go of people. And we are moving into Pluto and Aquarius, which is the bottom up. And now is the best time ever to say, how can I take my skills directly to market and use my voice in a way that honors me? So if you can't maintain it in, say, a corporate setting, who cares? Like my chart, for example, I have a 10th house Aries sun conjunct the midheaven. Like I could not hide if I tried. Like I have the sun at the top of the chart. No matter where I go, I'm getting noticed for better or for worse. Like I'm either the best person in the room or the biggest bitch in the room, but you're going to notice me, right? And in my 20s, I tried really hard to work against my strong personality because I wanted security, only to keep getting fired anyway, right? Like nobody, like they could sniff out the intensity. I mean, they didn't want to deal with it anyway. And it wasn't until I just surrendered to that strength in the archetype that I am at my core that life began to work for me. And the more I have leaned into my voice, the better things have gotten, not worse. When
What
I
really means, what it really means, go with the flow. People use that saying all the time,
go
but
with the
that's
flow,
really being in the flow.
yeah, go with the flow means to surrender to a path that
Correct.
might not be that comfortable. It
The flow
doesn't
is not
mean to be a
comfortable.
doormat. Go with the
No,
flow does not mean to be a doormat and to sell out and to sacrifice for other people's flow. Going with the flow means which way is the tide going? I'm going to go that way.
no resistance. Surrender.
Surrender, and then you'll learn to take responsibility for the aspects along the way that you need to actually get where you want to go. Anyone who has tried to maintain a strong presence in a system that doesn't want that strong presence, it's always going to push you out. I mean, it's always going to push you out. Like, so you can maintain if you want, like you can do that. You can also get insulin resistance, gain weight, have anxiety, deal with cancer. Like you can also set yourself up for all those things. No one's going to stop you. But if making that kind of sacrifice is what's required to take you back, most of these women, as you know, like who aren't doing those things, their relationships are shit anyway. They're not being good moms. They're tired. They're exhausted. They've quit putting out. There's strain everywhere. They can't meet up with their friends unless they're getting hammered because that's the only time that they can actually check out, right? Like this is not a life.
No, it's not. And it's very depressing and it's very sad and it's not fulfilling whatsoever. And I'm speaking because I'm remembering who I was before I did this work. That was me. Everything you described was me
Mm-hmm.
because I was not being the best mom. I would go out to the happy hours and that was when I would disconnect. I wasn't showing up and I was great at leadership roles. I was great at work. I was great at supervising, running coaching groups and all of this. But when it came to coaching groups, when it came to leadership, because this was before I did my personal development, but when it came to me telling my father something, what?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Or having a tough conversation, no, I would freeze. Words would not come out of my mouth. I would freeze. I would shut down and I would freeze.
I recently, and I'd mentioned this before the call today, but I recently, because I'm looking for I always like to have a mentor and a coach. I like to have someone who can kind of guide and direct me. I will pay for help if you are good at what you do. And so I was on the prowl for a new mentor and I responded to an ad. It was all about women helping women, like in that space. 10-minute ad, not a single man on the ad. I'm like, yes, I think I'd like to maybe work with a woman since I serve women and like let's see what happens. And okay, let me sign up to consult. And so I sign up for this call only to show up on the call with a man. So you use the word catfish. I just felt betrayed and deceived by the ad. I was like, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And he's like, yeah, I feel some resistance. And I'm like, well, I thought I was going to be talking to a woman, and I'd prefer to talk to a woman. And so he was like, okay, well, I'll get you in touch with a woman. Well, you'll have breakfast. A couple days go by, nothing. Intuitively, I was like, I think I got under his skin. But
Right.
I reached out anyway, and I was like, where's this woman that I'm going to talk to? And he was like, oh, well, I talked to my team, and we decided that because you're discriminating against men and because you were angry on the call, that we're not going to work with you. So maybe your anger is not working for you. And I said, well, first of all, like discrimination is well, it wasn't discrimination, it was expectation. I responded to your ad based on your messaging, and I was expecting to speak to a woman. And furthermore, preference is not prejudice. So let's clarify that. Secondly, I wasn't angry. What you saw was shock and disappointment because I felt betrayed by your ad. So maybe you should look into how you're marketing yourselves if you don't want to have this kind of confusion on calls. He writes back and says, well, this would be the last thing I say to you, but there's nothing wrong with our marketing and our advertising. You're the one that misread it. And I said, you don't actually get to tell me what I was experiencing at the time that I saw your ad.
Right.
Like you don't get to deduce that. Like I'm telling you what I gathered as a result of your ad. Furthermore, like, because he had initially responded with, oh, I've been busy serving other women.
So condescending.
So condescending. And I was like, yeah, like I didn't see your condescension, your passive aggressive condescension going into that. I was like, first of all, or I said, secondly, you're not concerned actually about serving other women. You didn't even take the time to understand a prospect, whether you wanted to work with me or not. It would have been to your advantage to get feedback on your ads. But you're only interested in serving yourself. And clearly you need women to fit into these perfect little boxes in order to work with them. And that's not going to work for me. And I said, but like, I get it because men like you hate women like me. Like, how dare I confront you? How dare I confront your ads? How dare I show up authentic and honoring my emotional experience in that moment instead of denying it to meet the comfort zone of a stranger? How dare I do that? I was like, yeah, you're not serving anybody but yourself. And I said, since we've already determined that I'm the bad guy, let me just throw some fuel on the fire of that narrative and leave you with go fuck yourself. Oh well. Someone who thought it was their obligation to meet someone else's uncommunicated expectations would have easily been malleable to the manipulations.
Right.
I run ads. If someone responds to my ad and there's confusion, I need to know that.
Hmm.
I'm
Absolutely.
responsible for those ads. And so if I'm not generating the right message, that's my problem, not the prospects.
Right.
So, standing in your own power and using your voice. And it's like funny because there was a split-second moment where I was like, did I do something wrong? And then I was like, no, in fact, I'm gonna double down. Um,
Mhm. That's where you take your pause and
yeah,
you evaluate and you check in.
I was actually happy he wrote back again because I was like, I have more to say. And, because he thought I was upset initially. Oh, no, 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 no. You haven't seen my anger, but I will show it to you. It's fine. Um, and that's the thing about, you know, again, outsourcing your power. I don't know this person. Why on earth would I be concerned about his feelings?
Exactly.
He wants my money. He should be concerned about my feelings.
Exactly.
What does this
Absolutely.
program cost? 10, 15 grand? Like he should be concerned about the prospect's feelings, not the other way around. And as someone who brings on people, my capacity to assist someone is only as great as I've done the work myself. And I have yet to
100%.
meet anybody who threatens my ego to the point where I'm like, I can't work with you.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, again, it's like there's no loss. Just redirect me, universe. I'm fine. I'll find someone who is willing to, take on my attitude and my money.
exactly. I mean, every time that you shift away from something that's not for you, you're going in the direction of something that is for you.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we talk about these things like at surface level and there's quick fixes, and yet the reality is so much of it is so deeply embedded in women.
It is. It is. And it takes a lot of work because healing is not linear. Breaking these patterns aren't linear. There's a lot of, oh, I thought I was over that. And then you get triggered about the same thing, but in a different form. But what happens is that you build the awareness that you're able to respond differently in a healthier way where you are not so stressed out, you're not so overwhelmed, and you're able to have more clarity and make better choices
Well,
because the triggers
yeah,
are there.
speaking up for yourself is how you heal yourself, and not in a defensive way. Like nothing that I said to him was defensive. I was like, yeah, you're right. 100%. In fact, I'm going to take you one step further. I remember when I started using guns as a result of the assault, and there was a lot of backlash from the yoga community. And this woman who I'd never talked to ever in my life commented on a post, and she was like, well, how dare you? And she made a list of all of the things that was wrong with me as a human being. And I said, you forgot to add that I'm not a vegan. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get into a power struggle with you. I don't know you.
And that's what I said earlier. When you get to the point that you really don't care, so many people care about what people they don't even know think
Yeah, who are these people in the universe that you're like, someone might see it? Who is this person that you're concerned about?
in your head. And even if they did, then what happens? What happens?
I mean,
Nothing.
as a coach, I have worked with some super successful people who themselves are so, how do I want to phrase this? Like these individuals are at the mercy of an erosion of self internally because they have their own insecurities and their own imposter syndrome, and you're worried about their opinion.
Yeah.
The only opinion I'm concerned with is my own, because I'm the only one that has to wake up to me every single day and live with me every single moment. So my opinion is the one, and I don't mean that obtusely.
No, it is the facts. The relationship with yourself is the one and only relationship you're certain to have from the moment that you come into this world and the moment you get out of it. Make sure that it's one hell of a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about unpacking some stress. Stop caring about what other people think. You will unpack a ton of stress.
Yeah, big time. Big time. And honestly, I'm like so much happier. So you're just so much happier
Well, that
because
piece you're looking for and that validation you're looking for, believe it or not, is not ever going to come to you from an external source. It's only ever going to be cultivated internally.
absolutely.
So lastly, I wanted to bring up the fact that like Romy's also one of the most disciplined and committed to her physical routine. And talking about stress, I know there's a lot of information out there right now that like running or working out can only add to your stress, when actually what I've noticed and learned is that it's the best way to actually get it out of the body. Um, there's a lot of hype. Oh, if you work out too much or whatever, you'll have like it'll create more cortisol. There's a reason that animals flap their wings after a fight, right? They have to
Yeah.
get the stress out, or bears will run away. They have to get that energy out of their system because if they don't, then it actually drains the system.
Yeah.
And you're really good about making time for yourself. Now, you're a morning person. I'm more of an evening person when it comes to working out, but like, who and where would you be without your workouts?
I honestly would not probably be here because that is has been my antidepressant. when I struggled with depression. That's why I started working out. Um, I started working out because I wanted to lose weight, but then I realized what it was doing for my depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
I realized, oh, this makes me feel good. So I make time for that. And people that don't get it probably think, oh, she's so vain. She doesn't have time for all this other stuff, but she always has time to go to the gym. Because if I don't work out, I would be so stressed out. I would be so stressed out. I'm not a nice person when I don't work out. I could tell like when I go on vacation and I haven't gone to the gym, there's not a gym available, or I can't even go for a run or whatever. I start getting bitchy like by day three. I'm not a nice person. So working out has, it just helps with my mood so much. It just feels good. You want to quick like lift me up when I'm angry, when I've gone angry and I go to the gym, I just let it out. It's a great stress reliever. It's a
Oh yeah.
great.
Well, and I came across a podcast recently, and she was like, it's not that, you can't go hard as you get older. It's that you just have to have the right nutrition and antidotes on the other end. So you have to make sure your nutrition's on point and your rest is on point. And as long as those two things are good, then like, yeah, it is what women do. And I've been this woman. Let me just cut 1,000 calories and work out harder. Well, then that drives the stress load to the body that much higher, right? Because now the body's like, we're in survival mode. You don't want to do that. But like working out as an antidote to the stress at the end of the day, or whatever. I mean, I could do cardio early and it doesn't impact my energy. It actually gives me energy. It feels good. But if I lift early, I'm wasted. So I lift at the end of the day because then I can take all that pent up stress and just get it out of my system. And it actually works to my advantage better. And then I feel better and I sleep so good.
And that's why we need to test different things to see what works for us. Because my issue is if I work out too late, I cannot fall asleep. And sleep is very important to me. I need my sleep. I would be wired. I'll be exhausted, but it'll be 1 in the morning and I'll be like
Yeah.
wired. So I can't go past 1 p.m. 1 p.m. That's it. I'm good.
And I'm
But
leaving the gym at 7 p.m. So it's really interesting, right? Like,
I know I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. So that's why. And it just makes me feel so much better throughout the day. But the working out, and yeah, I mean, the results of working out does make you look good too. So that is also a plus because who doesn't want to look good? Because I feel too, people trust you more when they see that you take care of yourself
oh, 100%.
because that takes discipline. There's certain things that you cannot buy. Yes, you could get surgery and get a fake ass or whatever, but you could tell. You could tell it's not real. You cannot buy the hard work that it actually takes to move your body, to work out, to build that grit, that mental calluses that you're just breaking through. Whenever you don't want to do something, you still show up. That's
Amazing how often I'm like just not in the mood to go. And I just go anyway. I just show up. And as a rule, like when I was teaching yoga and people would say, how do I know like it's like if I should do my practice or not? Because I don't always feel like I have the energy. And I would say, do your sun salutations. If you feel better after you do your sun salutations, the exhaustion was in your head. If you do your sun salutations and you feel worse, the same or worse, the body actually does legitimately need rest.
right.
And so I just take the same principle. If I get there and I start doing a set and then I feel like, fuck yeah, then I'm like, okay, like this was just in my head as usual. And like, let me just continue. And then I don't even think about it. I just keep going.
Mhm.
It's very rare that it's like actually in my body. And even then I'll continue. I just won't go as hard.
Exactly. And listening to your body is key because you're not going to be able to show up with the same intensity every single day. You don't want to get injured. And that's just another way to build that self-awareness with yourself. Because before I used to go hard or go home all day, every single day, 7 days a week. I used to run half marathons and I used to lift. and I did yoga. Sometimes all in the same day.
And overachievers like myself are prone to that thinking. Like, I should just be able to show up the same every day. And actually, you know, yes and no, because we are women and we cycle, and like our hormones are drastically different throughout the month. And what I have found is that if you honor that, you get
Yes.
better results.
That's a huge thing too, because I never did that. I had an IUD for so many years that I never even got my period. So I just was the same all the time. And once I removed it and started cycling and started learning, okay, I'm stronger these days. Maybe these days I'm going to do more low impacts. Just listening to my body, I've never looked better and felt better than I do now. It's insane. We're doing so much less.
Mhm. No, it's true. It's true. It's like when you honor the different times of the month, it makes a huge change in results, right? The most important thing is you stay consistent and you show up, but how you show up and what you do doesn't always have to be the same. And like, I always go back to this quote from Eat, Pray, Love, and I just love this because she was trying so hard to like have this discipline where she didn't lose her balance, and he asked her at the end, he's like, "So how is the boyfriend, Liz?" And she's like, "Oh, I broke up with him." And he's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Because I couldn't keep my balance." And he's like, "But Liz, part of losing your balance for love is what it means to live a balanced life." And so we have to keep that in mind that sometimes we have to lose our balance to maintain balance.
Right.
There's an ebb and a flow, and that's critical, right? And again, we're not men. I've said this before. So men, as I've dived into this whole health and wellness journey of like burnout in women, it's like men are not prone to burnout at the same rate as women because men have a backup. Men have their testes and they produce testosterone, which is a huge help.
Advantage.
We do not have that. We rely exclusively on the adrenal gland. And so when cortisol starts to run the show, we run in the red real quick. And so women who feel the need to keep up and be like men, it's like, well, it's going to cost you. There's no reason why women can't be equally as powerful, but we just do it differently.
In a different form.
And that's okay. And the women who don't get that, it's like they're in that space of betraying who they are. And that will eventually work against them. I had a friend in Florida who I don't talk to anymore because of her really poor behaviors. But she was like that. She was just balls to the wall and she refused to listen to her body. And I'm only logic. I'm no emotion. That's weakness. That's whatever. And it's just
She
like,
thought she wasn't me.
and yet everyone in her family died of cancer. And I'm like, so will you if you don't stop.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sorry that like my words are not good enough for your ears. That's fine. But like, I can't continue to stand by and watch you be this person and then be expected to just when actually I'm like, like I can't be friends with people that won't allow me to support them in a healthy way. And I couldn't do it. She wanted me to support her bullshit behavior, and I'm not an enabler. So, the best to her, like I said, she probably will end up with cancer because all the women in her family die of breast cancer young. And so that's fine. You know what I mean? There are ways to combat that and prepare and get yourself ready for that stage of life because they're all menopause when it happens or not. It's like the vegans who are like, no, it's the best thing ever until they hit menopause and then they can't do it anymore. It's like, well, okay. It was great until it wasn't, right? So, again, there's ebbs and flows and different seasons of life. And when we're young, we can get away with everything. But as we get older, it's really important to be in tune with our bodies and understand the cyclical part aspects of nature. And we can work with them and we can have amazing fucking outcomes, or we can be really stubborn and
Be
let
in that relationship.
everything show us the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Romy, it was a pleasure having you as usual. We should probably do more of these calls. Uh,
Absolutely.
Romy's a great asset in my life. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, until next time.
Till next time.